Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, God.
Glory to Jesus Christ.
Glory to God.
So tonight, I'm not going to do a homily, and there will be no sermon tonight. So I'm giving it here, and I'm giving it based on the reading for the liturgy tonight. And of course, you know, whenever Nativity falls on a Sunday or Monday, it's always irregular liturgically. But in any case, I thought it was important because I've seen numerous articles float by me on social media and so on, and as well as seeing things on TV about the Star of Bethlehem. So I'm going to talk about that. Now, you can see numerous amounts of specials on television telling how wrong the church had it all these years with regard to the wise men arriving at Bethlehem, for example, what the star really is, and so on and so forth. Its astronomical, appearance and so on. Which, by the way, if it was talking about an astrological star, which, as St. John Chrysostom says, it clearly was not a regular astrological star. And even the prophecies don't refer to an astrological star. They refer to a star rising out of Judah, referring to the personification. And a man, right? A man shall rise out of Israel. That's one of the prophecies for the Vespers readings. The star being, as St. John Chrysostom says, an angel. Ultimately was what the star was. But in any case, regardless, the story. But in any case, some of these specials will say the Magi, it took them 2 years to go and visit Jesus. And of course, the reason that they give for this is because Herod, killed all the male children 2 years and under. There's only one problem with this. The text itself doesn't allow for that, so we're going to look at the text. Right now, the story of Jesus' birth and the visitation of the Magi is found in the Gospel of Matthew. It is the reading for the Midnight Liturgy tonight. Now when Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, in the days of Herod the king, behold, wise men from the east arrived in Jerusalem. Genomto is the Greek word, so it's arrived. You'll notice some of our English translations, and unfortunately, yes, even our Orthodox study Bibles, which are New King James Version, which is not my absolute favorite. It's good on some points, but not on others. Now, the Gospel, which we read officially from the altar, is the original King James Version, which does have it right. So when they did the New King James Version, they didn't quite update it very well. But it has Jesus born in Bethlehem of Judea and Herod the king, when Jesus was born. Now, you'll notice a lot of modern translations say after Jesus was born. Well, that doesn't have the word after at all in the text. It says when Jesus was born in Bethlehem. And you'll notice a lot of translations say came to Jerusalem, but the Greek word there is arrived. When Jesus had been born, the wise men in Bethlehem, the wise men had arrived in Jerusalem. Okay? Got it? So we're talking, in terms of today, we're talking about an arrival, two different cities at the same time, right? And verse 2, saying, "Where is he that is born King of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east and are come to worship him." Now, what does it mean when it says his star? Well, here's the thing. There is a common ancient belief that when a great ruler, and particularly one who was a world game changer, was to be born, the star appeared to announce the coming of his birth. I will also say that this is indicative of the fact, notice it says, we have seen his star in the east. It doesn't seem to indicate they saw it since then. Like, we tend to think of the wise men following the star from Persia, from the east all the way to Jerusalem. But that's not what it says. It says they followed it, as we'll see later, they followed it from Jerusalem to Bethlehem. But it seems, and we'll see, it's very important, that little detail about their journey. And so, because later it seems to indicate they hadn't seen the star for a long time. They had a journey of likely a month or two to get there. And if you walked from the middle of Persia, by the way, modern day Iran to Jerusalem today, did not sleep, did not stop, just walked like I'm walking right now. Can anyone guess how long that would take? 407 hours. You can look it up on Google Maps. 407 hours. 17 days. Now that's if you didn't sleep. So likely it would take you between a month and 2 months, right? But, again, these three didn't all necessarily come from the same place. So they all saw the star meeting up together and then planning a trip, then getting on their way. This would have likely taken a couple of months. So at least, I'd say probably at least 2 months. And so it says in verse 3, when Herod the king had heard these things, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem was troubled with him. Why was not only King Herod, but all of Jerusalem troubled by all this? Does anyone find this strange? Why is all Jerusalem troubled by the wise men coming and looking for the birth of the king? Anyone want to take a stab at it? What's that?
Fear of a new ruler.
That's why Herod would have. But Herod wasn't necessarily liked by all of Jerusalem, right? They weren't necessarily fearing a new ruler.
Disruption of the status quo.
That's certainly part of it. So definitely Herod had his partisans, and they would have had fear in all of it. Genesis 49, verse 10, Septuagint version, by the way. A ruler shall not fail out of Judah, nor a leader out of his loins, until the one comes for whom it is appointed, and he is the expectation of the nations. That seems to indicate that the particular Jewishness of Judea was going to end, and the particularity of the Jewish religion was going to end. That's a messianic prophecy in Genesis 49. And the ruler shall rule. There shall be a king until the one comes for whom that throne was made in the first place, the Messiah. And then the line of kings is going to end. By the way, was Herod who beheaded John the Baptist the same as Herod who, when Jesus was born, no. Was he a king? The one who beheaded John the Baptist? No. He was a Roman tetrarch of Galilee because there was no longer a king. Because just like the prophecy said, the kingdom ended. And by the way, ever since then, there has been no king in Israel, right? Because the one for whom that throne was established and David sat upon it was for him. And for our benefit in the end. Yes, so all of Jerusalem was afraid because they liked their lives. They liked this whole temple business. Think about it. If you were one of the ones who were, selling turtle doves to offer in the temple, or better yet, right, if you were selling nice big rams and goats and sheep to offer at the various religious festivals, you don't want to hear this. Your business is ending, right? everyone liked having all these pilgrimages to Jerusalem. All of a sudden, if the Messiah comes, all this is coming to an end. So, because he's the expectation of the nations, the ethne, meaning all of the Gentile nations. No longer would there be Jewish versus Gentile, but in this new King of Kings, both would be blended. And there's a reason why, by the way, Genesis, puts it that way, and it's for that very nature. And so they liked their little ethnic enclave. They were comfortable with Herod. Some liked him, some didn't. But great fear fell upon it, because if this was the final, if this was indeed the one who fulfilled this, then their lives would change. When he gathered, verse 4, when he gathered all the chief priests and scribes of the people together, he demanded of them where Christ should be born. And they said unto him, in Bethlehem of Judea, for thus it is written by the prophet, now Bethlehem in the land of Judah are not the least among the princes of Judah. For out of thee shall come a governor that shall rule my people Israel. Then Herod, when he had privily called the wise men, inquired of them diligently at what time the star appeared. And he sent them to Bethlehem and said, go and search diligently for the young child, and when we have found him, bring me word again that I may come to worship him also. Now, this does seem to be one of Herod talking to equals, right? Like, the wise men were indeed important people, kings. And he does seem to be acknowledging equals there, that I may also come to worship him like you are. All kings going before the King of Kings. By the way, the kings of Yemen and Arabia at that time were Jewish. So Gaspar of Arabia was likely of Jewish lineage. And that's important maybe for another sermon. I won't go into it now because just that whole aspect of it. But it explains a lot why they knew about the star and what the star meant in terms of a Messiah. That already they had a Hebrew connection. All right, so they go from Jerusalem to Bethlehem. Does anyone know how far it is from Jerusalem to Bethlehem?
No, about 20 miles.
Really? I'll be impressed if you get this one.
1,000 miles.
1,000 miles.
Yeah.
You'd have to take a really long route to go 1,000 miles. 5 miles. 5 miles from Jerusalem to the cave in Bethlehem. You can Google that one too. The cave of the Nativity and the Church of the Nativity in Bethlehem. Which means that if you walked out to the end of this driveway, you turned right and went down to Route 60, that's how far it was that the wise men traveled with the star guiding their way. Now, they did not know where Bethlehem was, right? That's why they needed the star to guide them. So, verse 9. When they heard the king, they departed, and lo, the star which they saw in the east went before him until it came and stood over the place where the young child was. Which, by the way, I and every priest reads this verse before every liturgy in the proscomedia service. And the star came and stood over the place where the young child was. And we do it, and we bless it with the censer as we place it over the lamb, which is the portion cut out for communion and all the other commemoration particles around it. This is known as the star, and it represents the star of Bethlehem, standing over the place where the young child was. The place where the young child was a cave. And we have Mary, who gave this to me as a gift last year. We have a piece of that cave from the only time the cave was ever excavated and anything allowed to take out of it, 1963 in Bethlehem. And so we have that here, and I'm going to set it up for veneration. The star came to serve as the place where the young child was. And what does the next verse say? And they rejoiced. Verse 10. When they saw the star, they rejoiced with exceeding great joy. I don't know if any of you have ever heard the hymn to that. When they saw the star, they rejoiced with great joy. Right? They rejoiced with exceeding great joy. That's where this comes from. Why would they be rejoicing with exceeding great joy unless they had not seen that star for a long time? They saw it with exceeding great joy because they didn't know where they were going. The star reappears and goes before them and then stands over the place where the young child lay. This is all by night. So, given a timeline, folks, I don't know if you've been following along, but if it's 5 miles from Jerusalem to Bethlehem and the wise men arrived at the birth of Christ, and it's dark out because the star is going before them, and it takes 1 hour and 53 minutes. You can also look that up on Google Maps to walk that 5 miles. 1 hour and 53 minutes to walk from Jerusalem to the cave in Bethlehem. Then it's not so unreasonable that on that same night, after the shepherds had arrived, that the wise men indeed arrived on that same night. That is what the text seems to indicate. So, it winds up, and when they were coming to the house, by the way, some people say, aha, it says house in there. So they moved from the cave. It had to have been another night. Well, house just means dwelling. So no, that doesn't, certainly that was the dwelling, was the manger in the cave. And they saw the young child, Mary his mother, and fell down and worshipped him. And when they had opened their treasures, they presented him with gifts of gold and frankincense and myrrh. So this is kings before the King of Kings, kings of different nations, kings who were also magi, which were wise ones, and setting before him gold, frankincense, and myrrh. By the way, frankincense to this day is very expensive. And a bag this big of pure royal frankincense from the mountains of Oman on the cliff is $500. Yes, you can get a lot of different grades of frankincense that are cheaper. You can get one where you get a pound for $20, but real frankincense, which is literally it's on the cliffs of Oman and Yemen. And think Karate Kid. I forget whether it was 1 or 2. And Daniel goes out, and in order to get a real bonsai tree, right, we learn the difference in that movie between a real bonsai tree and other trees that are cut to be bonsais. A real bonsai tree, you have to go down this cliff, this dangerous cliff, and risk your life. Well, that's what happens with frankincense. These trees only grow on the side of cliffs. So you have to lower down with the rope. There's adders, there's venomous snakes to get this stuff. So there's a reason why it's $500. So now you see why it is as precious. Frankincense is as precious as gold. And literally to this day, it's still very, it's very precious. But back then, even more so.